And it's so easy to get busy and then like abandon your calling efforts or abandon your network and kind of focus on the deals you have in closing. But I think the key is just figure out what that outline for success is and then follow that.
Howdy. Welcome to I Hope This Email Finds You Well, a business development podcast for business development professionals. I'm here with Alissa Kolm. Okay, so that's the first thing is why is Alissa here? Well, you started your career in business development right out of school, right?
Yep.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your first role in business development.
Yeah, so my husband and I moved down to Fort Worth, Texas from Nebraska. So we were new to the market, and I found an opportunity for a business development role with now CFO, an accounting firm, fractional CFO services. And they really wanted somebody who lived in Fort Worth who could help to grow the market, build a network there. So I started in a new market, in a new role, in really a new career path with the firm.
So why did you key in on business development? Why was that something that you were looking to get into? Because it seemed like, right? That's what you chose.
And in hindsight, I didn't even really know that much about business development or what it was, but I knew I was extroverted. I liked the people side of things, and I knew I wanted to go into some kind of a business sort of path, maybe finance. So I felt like I could work for an accounting firm, even though I wasn't an accountant, but get the best of both worlds by focusing on the business development side.
Yeah, and so I think that keys in on a lot of interesting points where a lot of us kind of fell into BD, right? Or it chose us, where you were like, well, based on my personality, I like the people, I like the relationship development. Well, I like finance. Well, what is a role for me in this? And so you came out of school like really thinking about that, which I think is kudos to you for actually putting that level of thought into it. Because when I started my career in sales, I was just like, hey, who's hiring and how can I make money? Like that was really...
and that was definitely part of it too.
The extent of my thinking. But so you were at Now CFO, which is a great national firm, right? For fractional CFO, controller, accounting services. So what did you learn in that role around what is business development? How do you do that?
Yeah. So fortunately, the firm had kind of put together a really well thought out process for business development. And they had really identified kind of the key avenues for where opportunities would come from in terms of kind of sales opportunities, referral partners. There were certain buckets that we had identified as kind of getting in front of those referral partners who were meeting with clients that often needed our help. So CPA firms, bankers, those kind of key COIs. That was one of the things they had really trained us on. The other piece was just kind of trial and error.
Sure.
I went to a ton of events and a lot of them were a waste of time.
Yep.
And I spread myself very thin. And so it was just kind of casting a super wide net in the beginning to meet people, because I also didn't even know who I should be meeting in Fort Worth. Yeah. So that was part of it too, is a little bit of casting a super wide net and then over time refining what that really should look like.
Well, and I think we've all lived that. Where you've got to just get out there and meet people and build your network, and then you can refine over time. I think maybe a fast forward piece for you is because you were going into a professional service firm that had really put some thought into where do we shine, who's already referring us, who are our buyers, what does our ideal client look like. So they had already done some of the hard work around trying to help you with focus. Like, we need to focus on these types of people and these types of markets, which I think a lot of us will go into a new environment and have to figure that out for ourselves. And so I'm sure that helped you fast forward. Some of you were like, just, I need to spend my time here. And so when you were just going out there and meeting people, you said a lot of it's a waste of time, which, sure, as we develop in our career, that's a natural thing, is to say, okay, what is working and what's not, what is worth my time and what's not. So how did you go about that process of trying to distill down what was valuable to you?
Yeah, so I think there were a couple of things looking at it from two different directions. One is when I got here, I didn't offer a lot to my network as I was building it. I didn't have a lot of clients that I could refer people into. And so some of it was just figuring out where I could plug myself in to add value and finding out what events were good and then trying to plug in my network to that too if they weren't already plugged in there. And then the other piece is just, I think, you go to events a time or two, and if you feel like maybe it's not, like the people there are not targeting the same people you're targeting, or some of it comes down to who you like. As you get going, you start to network with some people and you realize that you really connect, you like each other. There's some, opportunities to cross-pollinate and work together. I think that's part of it too, is you build the relationship, and it's with people not only that you can do business with, but also that you actually want to do business with.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's an important point, is finding those people that you like and that you share some commonalities with, but you've got to meet a lot of people to find those people. And so you mentioned something as you were talking about thinking about networking and building your network and where you spend your time. You said add value. We hear that a lot, like go out and add value. When you have nothing to offer, when you're first starting out, what did you find? Like, do you have something that was your go-to whenever you were trying to add value to people? What was your add value early on?
Yeah, so there were really two things that I could leverage in those early days, is as I was meeting COIs and referral partners, to connect them with each other if they had not already met, and just kind of figuring out what somebody was looking for and try to connect them with somebody who's...
So being a connector.
Yes, that was one of the things. And then the other thing is we did participate in some different networking associations and different groups where I could bring guests to those events. So if I was a member of a certain organization, I could bring a guest for free. And it was just some of that kind of stuff of inviting people to events we were hosting. And if I was going on a prospect meeting, that was another thing I would do, is if I could bring when I was with Now CFO, if I could bring a banker with me into a prospect meeting, that was a way to potentially open a door for them that was kind of, low key and an opportunity.
So tell me a little bit more about that, right? Because that's next level. And a lot of people don't do that. I know that it took me a while to get there and to find the right people where, I had a banking friend who was in business development at your current bank back in the day, and we would do joint calls together. She would call some of her prospects and clients to get a meeting. I would do the same. We'd set up a day and we would go visit them together. So explain a little bit about how did you decide to do that? Because that's uncomfortable when you first do it. So what did that look like when you first started doing that? Yeah,
so really it started out with Now CFO at the time had a group that would call on the market for us and set up meetings, like cold meetings, basically, with prospects. Okay. So I had that kind of advantage. So that's how it really started, is I would be going on these meetings, and it was truly just a discovery meeting. There may be absolutely no need right now for our services, but that's where it was kind of nice to bring in a COI with me, because if they weren't super excited about any accounting services at the time, maybe banking is a relevant conversation at that time. So that's kind of how it started. But then the other piece of it is I would do some prospecting, just drop-ins to companies that were cold. And I would usually try to go with a COI just because it's less intimidating to walk in awkwardly when you're not alone. So that was the other thing I would do is, hey, banker friend or CPA or whoever, let's go together and go drop cookies off to this prospect. And then it's a lot less intimidating.
So you would set up joint drop days, right? And then you would leverage your inside sales team that was setting up more cold type appointments. And were you setting expectations with the prospect that you were bringing someone else, or did you just show up like?
Yeah, oftentimes I would shoot them a note and say, hey, if you don't mind, I'm going to have a COI with me, a banker friend, whatever the case was. And usually they would always say, yeah, no worries. I would give them a quick heads up generally.
Smart.
Yeah, just so they weren't caught off guard.
Sure. No, and I think that's a great tool for a lot of BD people to hear, is if you're not doing joint drop-offs, if you know you need to go do a little bit more colder things, like how are you leveraging your network to make it easier for you to go do? But then also do you have some of those meetings where you could offer, like, we're not sure if this is maybe the second time we met with this prospective client, just as relationship building. Hey, I would love to bring my banker friend. Would you mind? I'd love to bring my CPA friend, my insurance friend. Like, would you mind if we all got together? I think that's a really cool thing. So building off of that and seeing success. So we don't have to talk about numbers, but like, how did you perform within Now CFO? Were you had a quota, right? So were you hitting quota regularly? Or was it a struggle to keep up? Were the expectations misaligned? Like, talk to me a little bit about how you balance that.
Yeah, so we had some kind of weekly quotas related to activity, and then it built into more of a monthly kind of revenue quota, which built into an annual quota. So it was kind of a, if you followed the steps along the way, you should hypothetically hit that annual goal. And that was kind of the big overarching governor. But that really was helpful, I think, to have kind of some activity-based goals, just so that in theory, if you're doing the right activities, it will lead to revenue down the road. I would say that first year or two, it was more of a kind of roller coaster. You might have a great month, and then the next month, you just don't have that consistency yet, in part because you're still building your network. And I think to that consistency point, until you've consistently been in the market and shown up for things, and people have seen you around and start to trust you, and that relationship takes time to build. So after time and after you do that building, then it really starts to turn into something more. So I would say the first year or so in that role, it was choppier, but over time it definitely got more consistent, and it was good.
Yeah. And so what I hear you say is, the activity-based metrics, like if I have this many meetings with these types of COIs, if I set this many meetings with business owners or CFOs or accounting team members, then I should be able to hit my numbers. But a lot of firms will build, and I'm speaking to you, leadership, will set these quote, hey, you should be able to bring in 500K, $1 million, whatever that number is every year, but we don't have the activity plan to know how much activity I need to do to hit that number. Because if I do the right amount of activity with the right people, the quota will take care of itself for the most part. But it's really about the activity early on. So building your right network. So I love that.
Yeah.
So,
and I think those activities are those seeds you plant along the way too, because sometimes you might have that meeting with a prospect and it could be years, literal years down the road before it turns into anything. So I think those activities do count because those are the seeds that you're planting, and that's what you can control. You have more control over how many meetings you're having and who you're getting in front of. It's harder to control someone pulling the trigger today versus, well, we're going to wait 3 months, or we have a board meeting coming up. And there's always those things you can't control. So I think that's where like starting with that focus on what you can control is helpful.
That's what you can control. And how I talk to some of my firm leaders and business developers is having that scorecard. So what is the most valuable things that I need to be doing to generate the right activity to hit my number? So you had some success with Now CFO. You built this network. Now you're moving into banking business development. How do you keep organized? Like, what does your week, month look like?
Yeah, so it varies a lot by week and by month, but I would say a lot of it is reaching out to those people, especially in a new role. Now's a good time to reach out to the people that I've known a long time that I'm probably overdue to connect with.
Your calendar's full, I'm sure.
It is, yeah. So that's kind of one of the things. But the other thing is also just I am still doing some cold outreach. Okay. So I don't like fill my week with that, but I try to at least every week dedicate some time to what are some new names, whether even if it's just COIs, a CPA firm I hear about that I don't know anybody at that firm, is let me try to find somebody there to reach out to try to connect.
So, okay. So this carries over from your Now CFO days, right? So like me, I started my career at ADP, carrying a bag. So I did a lot of cold calls. I did a lot of drop-ins. And that's part of my BD rhythm, even though it's less a big of slice of the pie as it used to be. So you're cold calling, you're cold dropping. What does that look like today in 2025 for you?
Yeah, so I am generally kind of doing the old school, like literally just go buy some cookies, go drop into a company, a prospect that I want to get in front of, ask to speak with the CFO. If they're not there, I'm leaving the cookies, trying to get a card, and then follow up and ask for a meeting. And sometimes it's a little awkward and sometimes it goes nowhere, but there are those opportunities where maybe the CFO comes out and talks to you, or, they follow up with, or they respond to your email and you actually get a meeting with them. So I view it as like step one to what is then becomes a warm prospect is once you get that CFO to come talk to you or you get a follow-up meeting with them, now it's somebody that you can include on events you're hosting, or you can do things with them to hopefully kind of warm that relationship up.
We get so bogged down with these short-term revenue targets or goals that create this artificial shot clock for us, and we feel so much anxiety, and then we get desperate, and then that's when we start spreading ourselves thin. That's when we start we start sounding desperate. We start to try to close people. That's when things can go off the rails for us. But if we understand that this is a long-term approach, business development is about developing relationships. We're going to have some short-term wins. But to your point, what are we doing today to plant the seeds for them to become a client a year, 2 years, 3 years? And these are not, $10,000 clients. These are six-figure clients that we're pursuing because that's where we're going to try. I only need 10 of those to hit my $1 million. If I'm trying to pursue $10,000 clients, I'm going to need 100 of those. And so it's worth my time to go deep, plant the seeds, and do those things. So I appreciate you sharing that story. So speaking of stories, tell me a little bit, or maybe do you have a story around a big win for you that encompasses a little bit about how you pursue business development, whether that's dropping off, doing some drop-offs, whether that's a referral that came in and you had a great call, something interesting. Do you have a good win story for us?
Yeah, so I have a story where it was kind of one that what started out at Now CFO. It was a company that I had dropped into, met the CFO at the time. It didn't really warm up that much, and it was just kind of, hey, we'll stay in touch. A few months later, we got an opportunity at Now CFO to do some work for them. So we had a consultant out there. They became a client of ours at Now CFO. And then when I moved into banking, I followed up with that client, and they ended up ultimately moving their banking over to us. Cool. And we, have a great relationship. And so that's one of those that, again, I saw kind of how it played out, where if you help them and you do the right thing and, you follow up and do all of that, that relationship is built at that point, and it could lead to things down the road as well.
And I think, again, you brought up a great point where this follow-up, right? We've got to stay in touch with people. And I think this is really about proactively trying to serve people that could have a challenge or a problem that we can help with. And when we make it about us, like I've got to hit my quota versus I need to stay in front of this person because I know they're dealing with these challenges and I know I can be helpful when the time is right, and continuing to add value like we've talked about, whether that's understanding, do they like events? Do they like industry information? Do they like connections? Do they want to get involved? Like understanding what their personal and professional goals are, as well as their company goals, goes a long way to what Absolutely. You're doing. And so leave us with some business development tips. So you've talked about what you've learned over the years. You've shared with us some great insights on some things that we can try, right, and integrate in some of our BD. But when it comes to your business development philosophy or how you're pursuing business development, how do you stay organized? Can you leave us with maybe a tip around a tactic that you love? You've already shared some great ones, but leave us with a thought. Yeah,
so I would say having some kind of process, and that's figuring out who you want to get in front of and how you're going to do that, and then tracking that. Like I mentioned earlier, I haven't always had CRM tools everywhere I've been. Yeah. And if you don't have that, it's Excel or whatever you do have access to, and trying to utilize that and just have a process, kind of define what that is so you have an outline, and then follow that process. And it's so easy to get busy and then like abandon your calling efforts or abandon your network and kind of focus on the deals you have in closing. But I think the key is just figure out what that outline for success is and then follow that.
And follow that activity. It's all based on what do you need to be doing to generate conversations, because you're going to be busy with all your other stuff.
Yep.
And so what has helped maybe what is one thing that's helped you stay organized or stay focused? Is it calendaring? Is it having a good Excel spreadsheet organized list? Like, what is it that helps you the most?
Yeah, so I definitely rely on my calendar a lot. If something is not on my calendar, I will forget about it or not show up or whatever. So calendar is huge. So now I do have Salesforce, and I use that a lot to take notes and put stuff in there, because as much as I think I'm going to remember stuff, I have 2 young kids who don't sleep. I'm sleep deprived. I will forget. So I try to put as many notes, and I mean, sometimes it's like a novel I'm writing in there just to capture anything that was meaningful in a conversation I had with a prospect. That way later down the road, I'm not like starting from scratch. If we go catch up over drinks or lunch, we can kind of pick up where we left off, and I can follow up on the key things and also show that I know and kind of care about what's going on in their business. So I use that tool a lot. I still, though, I'm kind of old school, and I still like my Excel spreadsheets to kind of make notes of like, here's the companies I'm going to target this week or this month. And I can kind of go through that list, and it's just like right there. There's something about that visual that I like. So
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thanks for all your wisdom, and appreciate you coming on.
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.